theory, you will know that, see, you will, because when we are using something, I mean, when some perturbation which has a time dependence on that, and especially this is related to the transition between the different energy states. When we put an electromagnetic wave and we talk about the transition, how long we put the electromagnetic wave, or the time dependence of the electromagnetic wave, that plays a role in this perturbation or in the transition probabilities or your selection rules. So to deal with such kind of, I mean, practical applications in physics, we have to go beyond time independent perturbation theory and get to time dependent perturbation theory. Now, time dependent perturbation theory has like a lot of applications also in, we use a lot of calculations in, say, different quantum optical phenomena, where the atom is perturbed by the electric field of lasers, and they can be multiple lasers, like this, as I told you, that EIT phenomena, electromagnetically induced transparency phenomena, or any sort of phenomena where you have a quantum optics application. The theory part will have a time dependent perturbation theory. That's the basic of starting of any calculation in that. So there it becomes very important. You will here you will just have a very initial idea of that, and also you will work out like the interaction of electromagnetic wave with an atom. So there you will see how this perturbation theory works in calculating like the different transition strength we probably won't calculate, but the transition, the selection rules and other things. And most of the cases after that also we will use perturbation theory, but that is mostly time independent. So this is a time dependent one. And here in what it just basically means that in quantum statics, so this is entirely like the first part is entirely from quantum mechanics book of Griffiths. Okay. So in quantum statics, the potential energy function is an independent of time. So you can write VRT is equal to VR. So there is no time. So in that case, the time dependent Schrodinger equation you can write as H psi is equal to I H bar del psi by del T. And that can be solved by the separation of variables. So this psi RT is equal to psi R e to the power minus I et by h bar. So this you can write the wave function, and e to the power minus I et by h bar. This is kind of a time dependence in the wave function, and psi is R, depends on R. And so psi R, this satisfies the time independent part, only the psi R part, that is h psi is equal to e psi. Because the time dependence of separation of solution is carried by exponential factor, so which cancels out when we consider the physically relevant quantity psi modulus square. So all probabilities and expectation values are constant in time, and therefore you can make linear combination of these transition states. Okay. So, but the energy, possible values of energy and their respective probabilities are constant. So even if there is a time dependent part in the wave function, when we physically construct the probabilities and expectation value, this is, or the linear combination of such states, so they are all constant in time. So let us see how it happens. So this is a part of quantum statics. But now, when we allow transitions, that is quantum jump, as they sometimes call, like between one level, one energy level to another, so we must introduce a time dependent potential. That is, we can define it as quantum dynamics. So there are only a few exactly solvable problems in there. And the important part is that the time, when you are using perturbation theory, you have to mind that the time dependent portion of the Hamiltonian is small compared to time independent part. So therefore you can treat it as a perturbation. So the time dependent part, if it is stronger, we will see in later cases, then it is not a perturbation. We have to deal with something else. But if it is a small perturbation or the time dependent part is small compared to the independent part, we can treat as a perturbation. Now the most like very basic kind of prime dependent perturbation problem is the transition between a ground state to an excited state. So here we consider two systems, like there's two states of an unperturbed system, and the states are defined by the wave function psi a and psi b. Okay, so these are eigenstates of the unperturbed Hamiltonian. So when we write h and then 0 in the superscript, that means unperturbed Hamiltonian. So h0 psi a, that's, and the eigenvalue will be ea, and for psi b wave function the eigenvalue will be eb, and they are orthonormal. So psi a psi b is equal to delta ab. Okay, so when we have this orthonormality condition for unperturbed Hamiltonian h0, so this any state can be expressed as a linear combination of them. So we can write psi 0 is equal to Ca psi a plus Cb psi b. Ca and Cb are coefficients of this linear combination of psi a and psi b. And our job will be actually to calculate these coefficients, what they will be. So if we do not have any perturbation, then each component evolves with its characteristic exponential factor. Now, when we are like when we put in the time dependent part in it, so psi t. So here you can see that this is the psi 0 is Ca psi a plus Cb psi b, and in psi t, that is when the component evolves. So there is a time when the time comes into the picture, then it is written as this equation 9.4. So you have e to the power minus I Ea t by h bar, as well as e to the power I Ebt by h bar, depending upon psi a and psi b, those two factors come in. And we say that Ca modular square is the probability of that particle in the state psi a. Okay. So that means that the probability that a measurement of the energy yield a value of E. And the normalization of psi requires Ca modular square plus Cb modular square, that is the coefficients modular square coefficients is equal to 1. That is the normalization condition. Now that's like defining the wave function as a linear combination of psi a and psi b wave functions and the condition to that. Now till now there was no perturbation, so this is an unperturbed state. Now we include a perturbation. Okay, and when the perturbed system, what happens is that this perturbation is a time dependent perturbation which we define as h dash t. Okay, so since psi a and psi b, we constituted a complete set of psi a and psi b, so the wave function psi t can be expressed as a linear combination of them. So therefore the only thing that is the difference, now see in equation 9.4 our coefficients were not a function of t, but in equation 9.6 when we introduced a time dependent perturbation h dash t, then the coefficients Ca and Cb, they became a function of t. So now the coefficients are in a function of t in a time dependent perturbation case. Now what will be our problem? To determine Ca and Cb as functions of time. And to determine that, what we will do is that we will consider the particle to be in a state psi a, and then it makes a transition to a state psi b at some later amount of time, t1. Okay, so when the system underwent a transition psi from wave function psi a to psi b, so a to b, So we can write the coefficients in this manner. Now you can see here. Can you, okay, my mouse, can you follow my mouse?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In, actually, in Zoom, there is a good way of defining the mouse. I don't know whether in Google they have done that. Let me check once. If they are given, I mean, they are introducing new things. So they have introduced a whiteboard, but they haven't introduced anything kind of a, let me see in the setting if there is anything. No, nothing.
You meant to say pointer?
Pointer, yeah. Zoom has a very nice laser pointer. But here there is nothing like that. Maybe if you pay money, they will give you. Yeah, that is also a very nice thing to actually consider, because okay, till March, I am happy. Our class will be over. After that, Google will ask for money. Okay, fine. Let us carry on. Wait. Where are we? Yes. Hide. So can you see my mouse now?
Yes, sir.
Can you follow it? Okay. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time. Okay, so what I'm telling you is that initially it was in, so initially the particle was in Psi A, and when we called, I mean, when we define the coefficients in terms of time, so you can see Ca at 0 time is equal to 1. Because the particle is in Psi A state, and then under that the condition, the Cb at time 0 is equal to 0. So Cb at time 0 is equal to 0, but Ca at time 0 is equal to 1. So the particle is in state A, which is defined by Psi A, the wave function. And a later amount of time we are defining at t1, at later amount of time. So Ca at t1 is equal to 0 and Cb at t1 is equal to 1. So coefficient of Cb now from 0 it became 1, and the other one from 1 it became 0. So the particle has made a transition from Psi A to Psi B. Okay, is it clear, right?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay. Now we start solving for these two coefficients, which is dependent on time. So we write this time dependent Schrodinger equation as we defined below, earlier. But here the Hamiltonian H is now addition of the unperturbed Hamiltonian H0 and the perturbed Hamiltonian H dash, where the perturbed Hamiltonian H dash is a dependence of time, but not the unperturbed one. So this is our time dependent Schrodinger equation. And now if once we go one step back and we have this equation, Psi t is equal to Cat Psi A e to the power I EAT by H bar. So, and similarly for CBT. So putting this 9.6 equation into 9.7, let us see what we get. So into 9.7 means H psi. So we will write H psi, and the right hand side we will do I H bar del psi by del t. And the psi is actually 9.6, this equation. So when you do del psi by del t, you will get derivatives of your CAT. I mean, CAT now is not a constant. For a time independent case, it could have been a constant, but now it is a dependent on t. So what you will get in the equation is these kind of factors, which is Ca dot. So dot means del Ca by del t. Okay, can you observe? Can you see the dots?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Because even if I am taking this class in Bose Institute in your classroom, then I'm absolutely sure you won't see the dots. Because all my classes people said there is no dot, sir. She said, okay, in your note you will get the dots. the resolution is not so good. So, but here you can see in the, so yes, now you can follow that, and you see that on the left hand side, what we have put is that we have put the values of H0. We have replaced like the shy A as A0 as shy A and shy B, the capital Psi as psi A and psi B, and also included the perturbation term H dash. So H dash psi A and H dash psi B. And on the right hand side, we have taken the derivative of that. So we got terms like Ca dot, that is del Ca by del T and del Cb by del T. And the last two terms, we actually got the derivative of the e to the power I EAT by h bar. So the derivative of that term, and which we got as minus IEA by h bar and IEB by h bar. Now, if you look carefully, then you see that from the two terms on the left cancel the last two terms on the right. So it's, I guess you can simply see that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This comes directly from your 9.1. So this simple fact. Okay. Psi 0 psi A is equal to EA psi A. So from these 9.1 equation, you can see that you can cancel out the first two terms on the left and the last two terms on the right. We are left with Ca H dash psi A e to the power I EAT by h bar. These terms, which is the, so the left hand side is only now has the terms of the time dependent perturbation, and the right hand side will have terms which is the derivative of the coefficient Ca and Cb. Those terms are only left. Now with this, we go to the next step, that is we want to isolate the Ca dot, that is the derivative of Ca and the derivative of Cb. So d psi by dCa by dt and dCb by dt. So how can we find out or separate out the two derivative terms dCa by dt and dCb by dt from this equation 9.8? And for that, what we do is that first we try to isolate like dCa by dt, that is Ca dot. We take the inner product of psi A and then use the orthogonality condition of psi A and psi B, that is psi A psi B bracket is equal to 1. So we use that, and this Ca, so Ca del psi A h bar psi A, so this is a bracket within a, so psi A and the bracket on h bar, and then next one will be Cb and psi A psi B on h bar, because h bar psi B, and the last term will only remain as minus I bar Ca dot e to the power I EAT by h bar, because psi A psi B will be 0, right? The bracket on that, because it's a delta AB, so it will be 0. And then in short, you can define this like psi I h bar psi j, this term as h bar ij in the matrix formulation. So this is pretty clear. And now if we multiply by minus I by h bar e to the power I EAT by h bar, so on both sides, then we get Ca dot is equal to minus I h bar Ca h dash AA plus Cb h dash AB e to the power I within bracket EB minus EA T by h bar. So just follow and see that if this comes or not. This is very simple.
So 9.10, right?
9.10.
Yes, it's coming.
Okay, so if you multiply by this term, okay, minus I by h bar e to the power not minus I but plus I ea t by h bar, actually one of the exponential terms vanishes, and then we are left with Ca dot. This is this expression. So similarly, we can also have an inner product of psi with small psi b, and then single out or pick out Cb dot term. So in the first one, we actually took an inner product with psi a. Similarly, we can take an inner product of psi b, and then we can find out in a very similar fashion, we can find out the term of Cb dot. Okay, which is like minus I by h bar Cb h bb dash. Just a is replaced with b, and you see here that this in the Ca dot there is a term of Cb in the second term, and similarly in Cb dot there is a term of Ca, and here it is h bar ab. So the matrix here is just the opposite, h dash ba, but e to the power I, that term eb minus ea t by h bar, that term remains the same. So this is also pretty clear, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now we have the time derivative of both Ca and Cb, the coefficients. Now let us see that, I mean, you can define more things from here. So this two equation 9.10 and 9.11, this gives you the, you can say, the handle of how to take care of the coefficients which is dependent on time, and therefore we can use this perturbation theory. So we can determine Cb and Ca, and then they are completely equivalent to time dependent Schrodinger equation for a two-level system. So typically what happens is the diagonal matrix terms of h dash vanish. So h dash aa is equal to h dash bb is equal to 0. So this is kind of like a very ideal case where the diagonal terms vanish. If the diagonal terms doesn't vanish, then the solution of such kind of time dependent Schrodinger equation is not very simple as this one. And there are cases where the diagonal terms doesn't vanish. So if there are decay terms, of if there are like multiple interaction between the electric fields, then the diagonal terms doesn't vanish. And that's kind of the calculation that we do in quantum optics calculations or quantum optics problems. Sometimes the problems are not exactly analytically solvable because of that. So what we had to do, we had to go for numerical solutions. So we put in numbers and see how it comes out, and then match with whatever the spectrum is. Not like exactly analytically solvable things are there, but if we can analytically solve it, then nothing like that. So you don't have to. So these are like research problems that we do in our lab. So this is a very simple that how the transition happens, where typically these diagonal matrix terms, we let it vanish. So h dash aa is equal to h dash bb is equal to 0. And so if you take this diagonal matrix elements to vanish, then the terms become more simpler. C dot is equal to minus I by h bar h dash ab to the power minus I omega 0 t cb. So omega 0 now we can define as eb minus ea, that is the change of the difference between the energy levels, by h bar. Here we assume eb to be greater than or equal to ea. So omega 0 is always positive, greater than 0 or equal to 0. Okay, so in this case you can define Ca dot in terms of Cb and Cb dot in terms of Ca, and the perturbation matrix is like h dash ab for Ca dot and h dash ba for Cb dot. So is everything clear till now?
Yes.
Okay. Now when we have this formulation in our hand, the basic perturbation formulation, now we go a little bit ahead, and let us see what we can get as the when we come to the real particle. So everything is exact over here. We have made no assumption about the size of the perturbation. But if h dash is small, we can solve this equation 9.13. So this is our equation Ca dot. Now you see that this equation is like like time dependent Schrodinger equation, equivalent to time dependent Schrodinger equation for two-level system. And now, like this is, now if the perturbation h dash is small, we can solve this by the process of successive approximations. How do we do that? Now we go to our original problem that the particle starts in the lower state. So at time is equal to t is equal to 0, the particle was in the lower state. So Ca0 is equal to 1 and Cb0 is equal to 0. Okay. Now, if for the zeroth order, if there is no perturbation at all, so they will stay this forever. So the particle will, if there is no perturbation, then actually the particle will always stay in the ground state. It will never go, it will never do a transition to an excited state. So this is the zeroth order. So we can define the zeroth order if there is no perturbation, Ca0. So this now, what happens is that this, what you call the superscript within bracket 0 means at time 0. So this is, this is defined as the order of approximation. So this 0 is not so this is the order. So this is a zeroth ordered approximation in time t is equal to 1 and Cb0 at time t is equal to 0. So this is the condition when there was no perturbation. Therefore, we started with Ca0 is equal to 1 and we ended with Cat is equal to also 1. So there was nothing happened here. This is the zeroth order perturbation or no perturbation. Now we give a small perturbation. If there is a perturbation, which is the first order approximation, we insert the zero order values to the right side of equation 9.13. So what happens here is that in the first order means, so in the first order means dCA, and here you see that in the superscript it is 1. So this is the first order. In the superscript this was 0. So this is the zeroth order and this is the first order. dCA1 by dt equal to 0. And then this becomes Ca1t is equal to 1 in the first order. So this is the first order approximation. Similarly, dCv by dt in the first order approximation, that is defined by minus I by h bar h dash ba e to the power I omega t. So this, if you can integrate, then you will see that Cv1, that is the coefficient of the first order of the coefficient Cv, that is equal to minus I h bar and integration to 0 to t h ba dash t dash e to the power I omega 0 t dash dt dash. Okay, is this like clear?
Sir, can you repeat again 5 minutes before?
That is this is, so we are talking about perturbation, and we are going in steps from zeroth order to the first order perturbation and second order perturbation. Okay, so in the zeroth order perturbation, nothing actually changed. So at time the particle itself was in the ground state. So Ca0 t is equal to 1 and Cb0 is equal to 0. This is the zeroth order perturbation. Now in the first order perturbation, we insert these zeroth order values in the right hand side. So what we want to know is that we want to solve this equation 9.13. So we want to solve this equation to get the values of Ca dot and Cb dot. And since it is a time dependent Schrodinger equation. So we took the process of successive approximations, assuming that the perturbation h dash is small, right? So the zeroth order was very straightforward, but in the first order approximation, we did dCA by dt equal to 0. Now dCA by dt means equal to 0 means the particle actually has so
The
that,
coefficient
yeah,
is
with time it has actually not changed. Okay. Hello. Somebody said something?
yes, yes. That I repeated the same thing, sir. It is not changed. The coefficient is independent of time now.
Yeah, coefficient independent of time. Yes, yes. So CA dot again at t is equal to 1. But now you have the coefficient of, now we are looking at the first order of CB term. And CB by dt, that is defined as this minus I h bar h dash ba e to the power I omega 0 t. Now, if we want to take out, if we want to find out the coefficient of CB in the first order term, then this is the integral term in equation 9.17. This is the integration term that we have to solve it. Okay, so you see that in the zeroth order, the CB term at time t is 0. But in the first order, the CB term at time t is not 0. But it has an integral expression which involves the time dependent perturbation h dash ba at some time t dash. Right? Did I explain properly?
Yes, sir.
So coefficient of first level is unchanged, but the
First
coefficient
level, that's the zeroth level. Zeroth level, that didn't change. That is 1 and 0. But in the first level, I mean first order, the CA term, the coefficient of CA term, that did not change. That is still 1. But the CB term in the first order, that changed. And it has a time dependent perturbation part in it. That is H dash part in it. So you see that in the first order, there is a slight change in the coefficient depending on the time.
Okay.
Okay. So you see that in the first order, there you are actually getting an effect of perturbation, which was not there in the zeroth order.
Okay.
Right. And you see there is actually a fun part over here. So if you take the modular square of CA dash, so if you want to get something like this, the normalization condition, CA modular square plus B modular square is equal to 1, right? So with no perturbation, this is actually true over here. CA modular square at zeroth order and CB modular square at zeroth order is equal to 1. But in the first order, you immediately see that CA modular square of 1 first order and CB modular square of the first order is not equal to 1. So
Yes.
this is an interesting thing. So is it violating this, what you call this, normalization rule? Actually, you see immediately that since it is obviously it is not equal to 1, so there is something more. So this first order doesn't tell you the complete story. This means that there is an error in the first order. So you have to go to beyond first order to get the complete story. Now, if we include, now see, if we include the perturbation term h dash ba and then find out the, I mean, if we include the h dash, so if we include this this time dependent perturbation in the order of this time dependent perturbation, then actually this modular square becomes 1. So normalization is there, but not if we just take the modulus of the coefficient. So there has to be the modulus of the coefficients, but there is also something else which is left out, and that is the perturbation part. So we can go to the next order. So there is an error here that the modular squares do not become 1 for the first order perturbation. Now we use this CA 1t is equal to 1 and CB 1t is equal to this integration, and then put it back again to equation 9.13 to get the second order approximation. Now you go to the second order approximation. So CA dCA by dt of 2, that is the second order, and if you put this integration there, that it becomes minus I h bar h dash ab e to the power I omega t, again minus I h bar. This comes from the, because see now CA 2 by 1 CA, I mean double differential is there, and then minus h bar, and this is the term which comes from CB term. So what we do is that we got this CB1, and the CB1 we want to put in the CA. Now let us take, now see, we want to calculate the double differential of C, which also has the CB term. So when we are calculating double dot, then the second order, then CB dot will also come. So dCB by dt, that will come, or the first order will come. So we replace this first order into this equation to get the second order of CA, and therefore this part, this integration part from 0 to t h dash bat dash, this comes from CB first order, CB1. Okay, and then you can expand. Okay, you can actually do an integral, and then what happens in the integral, that is CA second order is actually 1 minus 1 by h bar square, and then there are two integral terms, 0 to t h dash ab t dash e to the power I omega 0 t dash, and another integration. So the first integration on h dash of AB, and the second integration is h dash of BA. And the first integration is 0 to t, the second integration is 0 to t dash, because this is the term which comes from the first order approximation. Therefore we define as t double dash and dt double dash. So there is integration on dt double dash, integration on dt dash. Now there are integration, two-time integral in the coefficient of CA in the second order. While CB remains unchanged. CB second order is equal to CB the first order. So can we just work it out and see? One step back, a previous page.
So we have to again put that CAT in the CB dot, right? Then we can check that whether it is same or
Just
not.
take care of the first expression. Yes, for this 9, the first part of the 9.13 CA dot per I omega 0 T CB. Now we want to take the second order CA dot or CA, right? So we include the first order of CB, and the first order of CB is this expression.
Sir, can you give us one more minute?
Sure, sure. You take, and then you also check that CB will stay unchanged. So CB in the second order is equal to CB and the first order. That also you can actually find out from here. So you see here the CB dot is already there. So this is the first order. Okay, if you take the second order of that and you put in of CA is good. Okay, then it actually it becomes equal to dCB1 by dt. So your second order of CB is the exactly the expression of the first order of CB, because the last term, that is the first order of CA, is equal to 1. So check both.
Sir, it will be same if and only if in the you can see the CAT here we have 1 minus something into something, that something into something should be 0. When we multiply, when we put the CA2T in CB dot formula,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes, that you have to put. Yes.
But why it should be 0? I mean, what's the reason that it should be 0? See, we can multiply that e to the power minus I by h cross h be a prime e to the power I omega naught t. that is a formula, right? CB dot equal to minus IH by H cross HBA prime e to the power I omega naught t into CA. Here CAT is the line that the second line 9.18. This one we have to put in CB dot formula. So when we put that, there is 1 minus something that. So
yes,
if we
yes.
multiply 1, then if the rest thing is 0, then it is obvious that CB will be CB2 will be CB1. So the point is we have to make the second term 0 for the CA2. When we multiply with the formula minus I by H cross HBA prime e to the power I omega naught t. So the thing is that why it should be 0. Sir, can we take this one as a homework?
Yeah, you can take it.
Okay.
We have supposed that the particles
Okay, sir, your voice is cutting. Can you again repeat what you have said?
Understand like why this one came.
सर आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा अच्छे से.
So did you understand how this one came?
हेलो सर आपका आवाज प्रॉपर्ली नहीं आ रहा है.
हेलो भवानी.
भाई.
Okay.
Yes, that one. I have to see how that one came.
सर का आवाज नहीं आ रहा है.
अच्छा, वो 9.18 तुम लोगों ने देखा वो कैसे आया? 9.18 आई मीन 1 माइनस समथिंग वो कैसे आ रहा है?
वो क्या, वो तो उसमें पुट करना है जो सीबी की वैल्यू है ना, जो
नो नहीं रे, dca2 dt जो है वो देख माइनस आई वो करके माइनस 1 बाई एच क्रॉस स्क्वायर आ गया. एंड अगर dt उधर लेके अगर इंटीग्रेशन करेंगे तो वो आ जाएगा 1 बाई एच क्रॉस स्क्वायर, वो समथिंग आ जाएगा. पर ये 1 माइनस क्यों आ रहा है, कैसे?
अच्छा देख, वापस वो करने दे फिर बताता हूँ. देख स्लाइड शो करने दे सर को. क्योंकि वहां पर जब अपन कांस्टेंट लगाएंगे ना, जब सीबीए इंटीग्रेट करेंगे तो वो पार्ट प्लस ये वो कांस्टेंट आएगा. फिर अपन क्या है कि 0 से t देखेंगे ना, तो जो कांस्टेंट की वैल्यू है तो c टाइम पर और c 0 पर क्या है, तो स्टार्टिंग में अपना 1 था ना, और उसके बाद में ca की वैल्यू 1 थी, तो 1 माइनस समथिंग होगा.
हाँ बिल्कुल सही पकड़ा है हमने, वो देखा ना. बिल्कुल. सही. अब देख
दो बार
हम लोग ये सर यार.
हाँ वो क्या बोल रहे थे? You're telling
हाँ,
what you're telling is right.
1 minus something.
There are two. I mean, there is after the integration you get this term, and then you get
Yes,
n1. And you have to integrate two times.
सर आई गॉट इट।
अच्छा, यू एक्सप्लेन, तुम कुछ बोल रहे थे।
Sir, actually that comes from
वो
the
कनेक्शन
initial
कर दिया।
condition. I mean, for the definite, so we have to put the initial condition. For that, we have put the one, added one.
हाँ हाँ हाँ, yes, that is the zeroth order condition. Oh, okay. In the first order, CA1 T is equal to 1. That you mean by the initial condition?
Yes, sir. CA T equal to 1, CB T equal to 0. Then put the initial definite integral.
अच्छा, होल्ड ऑन, अभी मेरा एक फोन आया, मैं इसको लेता हूँ। वेट अ मिनट, देन वी विल कंटिन्यू।
सुरेंद्र,
हाँ भवानी।
यार पहली बात तो ये कि ये तो डेफिनेट इंटीग्रल है, इसमें हम पुट करेंगे ही क्यों इनिशियल कंडीशन?
अरे तो ये जब करेंगे तो प्लस कांस्टेंट भी तो आएगा, इंटीग्रेशन करने के बाद में कुछ टर्म प्लस कांस्टेंट
अरे
भी तो
वो
होगा।
वो डेफिनेट इंटीग्रल में होता है सर, इनडेफिनेट इंटीग्रल में होता है, ये तो डेफिनेट इंटीग्रल है, उसका तो पहले से लिमिट है। तो मे भी ये हो सकता है कि हमने तो अभी तो लिमिट पुट किया ही नहीं ना, उससे पहले तो हम कर ही सकते हैं ये।
अरे ये देखिए, पहले ये जीरो से टी दे रखा है ना, तो इसको मैं कुछ दूसरा पैरामीटर मान लेता हूँ, मान लो टी प्राइम में कर रखा है, उसके बाद में जीरो से टी मतलब अलग टाइम पे करता हूँ मान ले। और जो पहले वाला टर्म था उस पर भी मैं पुट करता हूँ कि कुछ कांस्टेंट है और जीरो से टी है। तो उस टाइम पर जब स्टार्ट जीरो टी पर था तो उस कांस्टेंट की वैल्यू थी 1 थी, मतलब सी ए की। और जब वो जीरो पे चला गया तो जीरो था, ऐसे देख
नहीं
दो
नहीं नहीं नहीं
लिमिट।
नहीं, ये नहीं है एक्चुअली। जैसे हम इंटीग्रेशन करते हैं ना, वो ऐसे ये होगा ही नहीं। ये एक्चुअली समथिंग इज कॉल्ड द इंटीग्रल इक्वेशन। तो इंटीग्रल इक्वेशन में विथआउट बिफोर पुटिंग द लिमिट ऑन टू द फंक्शनल्स, वी कैन एक्चुअली असाइन द इनिशियल कंडीशन। तो इंटीग्रल इक्वेशन सॉल्व करने के लिए ये किया है, अभी इंटीग्रल इक्वेशन है ना, राइट?
हाँ तो वही, पर इसमें वो इनिशियल कंडीशन पुट किया है।
ना इनिशियल कंडीशन पुट किया है, राइट। अब देखिए कि ये जो C A2T को हमने 9.13 में लिखा, जो कि मतलब
हम्म
जो CB डॉट का वो इवोल्यूशन दिखाता है कि CB डॉट इक्वल टू नेगेटिव I बाई H क्रॉस HBA प्राइम e टू द पावर I ओमेगा 0 नॉट CA। तो ये CA का वैल्यू हम वहां पे पुट कर लेंगे। अब देख,
हम्म
अगर मैं वन से वही मल्टीप्लाई करता हूँ तो CA2T इक्वल टू CB, हाँ CB1 इक्वल टू CB2 हो गया, राइट?
हम्म, हाँ।
समझ गया? तो इसका मतलब ये है कि जो सेकंड पार्ट है, जो 1 माइनस 1 बाई एच प्लस स्क्वायर मल्टीप्लाई बाई समथिंग दैट सन
हम्म
मल्टीप्लाई विथ दैट माइनस आई बाई एच क्रॉस एच बी ए प्राइम ई टू द पावर आई ओमेगा नॉट टी जीरो होना चाहिए। तो इसको हम जीरो कैसे करेंगे? समझ
हो
रहे मैं
गया।
क्या बोलना चाहता हूँ?
समझ रहा हूँ मैं, एक बार और कर देखता हूँ, एक सेकंड।
अब उसके लिए फिर से उसके लिए भी इंटीग्रेशन करना पड़ेगा, देख समझ रहा है, फिर से मल्टीप्लाई करो, फिर से इंटीग्रेशन करो, एक और टी का पैरामीटर आ गया, क्योंकि उसका भी तो डॉट है ना, उसके बाद फिर से वो इंटीग्रेशन होगा उधर जाने के बाद। समझ रहे मैं क्या बोलना चाहता हूँ?
मैं रुक, अभी समझा नहीं हूँ।
देख सीबी डॉट का, अब देख CA2 का वैल्यू हम निकाल
ये तो
लिया,
रख
तो हमको
दिया।
सीबी चाहिए ना, राइट, सीबी
हाँ
चाहिए,
हाँ
तो सीबी डॉट में वो सीए का वैल्यू हम पुट करेंगे, तो 1 में जब मल्टीप्लाई करेंगे तो माइनस आई बाई एच क्रॉस एच बी ए प्राइम ई टू द पावर आई ओमेगा नॉट टी सी आ जाएगा, सॉरी ओमेगा ई टू द पावर आई ओमेगा नॉट टी आ जाएगा। फिर हमको जो 1 बाई एच क्रॉस स्क्वायर, ये जो बड़ा वाला टर्म है, उसको भी
हाँ
वो
हाँ
मल्टीप्लाई करना पड़ेगा। अब जो सर ने ये बोला है कि CB2T इक्वल टू CB1T, वो तब पॉसिबल है जब वो बड़ा वाला टर्म 0 हो जाए।
हाँ हाँ
तो अब CA डॉट ही, सॉरी CB डॉट ही हमने निकाला, CB निकालने के लिए हमको राइट साइड में DT मल्टीप्लाई करके इंटीग्रेशन करना पड़ेगा, और फिर से अभी जो T प्राइम है, T डबल प्राइम में फिर से एक और T आ जाएगा, क्योंकि हम एक बार फिर इंटीग्रेशन कर रहे हैं। तो उसके बाद आई थिंक कुछ इनिशियल कंडीशन होके कुछ होना चाहिए, मतलब जिससे 0 हो जाए।
एक सेकंड मैं करके ही देखता हूँ, पेन को पहले भी किया था, वापस एक बार करके देखता हूँ।
और मे बी आई थिंक वी कैन टेक इट एज होमवर्क इफ इट इज।
अच्छा तुम करके देखना, ठीक है, लेट मी, हाँ टेक इट एज ए होमवर्क, तुम नेक्स्ट डे दिखाना। ओके
ओके सर, दैट विल बी फाइन।
हाँ, so can you see the slides?
Yes.
अच्छा ठीक है, so this I was telling you, like now this will be this CA2T, this expression, and this is the second order perturbation expression that we got. Now you have to see, now one thing is very exciting here, that is that CA2T, this includes the zeroth order term, and this includes the zeroth order term, and the second order correction would be the integral part alone. So one is the zeroth order term, and this entire integral part, this is actually the second order correction to the zeroth order term. Okay, so here the time dependence, the perturbative part is the correction term is the second order. And if you go on like this, then you can see, now if you can go one step back and see the first order, so you see that in the first order and in the second order, so after always inserting the nth order approximation in the right side of 9.13 and solving for n plus 1th order. So in principle, we could continue this restructure, and it is always like inserting the nth order approximation to the right hand side of 9.13 and solving for n plus 1th order. This is what we did. Now the 0th order term contains no factor of h dash. The first order contains one factor of h dash, and the second order term has two factors of h dash, and so on. This is quite clear, okay, because in 9.18 in CA2T you have two factors of h dash AB and h dash BA. Okay, Now this actually means that CA is modified every even order and CB is modified every odd order. And this would not be true if the perturbation included diagonal terms or if the system started out in a linear combination of two states. So this is also a very important factor. Can you follow?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you see the CA term, then it sees that the CA is modified every even order. So here CA is modified every even order. So in the second order, CA is modified. But in the first order, that is the odd order, only CB is modified. And in the first order, it is only H dash term, one factor of H dash term. And in the second order, there are two factors of H dash term. And as I was telling you that the error in the first order is like evident because CA1 T modulo square plus CB1 T modulo square is not equal to 1. So the exact coefficient must of course obey this equation 9.5. So it has to be 1. Therefore CA dash is and CB1 T dash CA T modulo square and CB T modulo square will be equal to 1 to first order in H dash. So when we are dealing with only first order in H dash, then it is equal to 1. And which is all that we expect from first order approximation. So the same goes on for higher order. So in all the orders, if you just the coefficient themselves, if you are not taking this first order into account, they will not be equal to 1. So if you take this first order H dash, then it will be equal to 1 because like this is actually the approximation comes in. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So it will never be like, since there is a perturbation, this will like the solutions will never be exact, but it will have an error term added to that. And this error terms goes on as the first order, second order corrections. This is actually the basic of perturbation theory. Okay. And see, this is another thing is that if you start with a linear combination of the two states, this is what I was telling you. If we have done one assumption, and that is H dash A and H dash BB is equal to 0. Because we have taken both the states. I mean, the transition is between state A to state B, where B has a greater energy than the energy of state A. Therefore, we have put the diagonal matrix terms H dash as 0. This is our assumption here. But think about when we are dealing with two different states. I mean, there is a coupling between states, or there is a dress state. So dress state means your electromagnetic field. What we create is that, say, like by two different laser wavelengths, we create a state which is superposition of both the maybe superposition of two excited states. There is one ground state and there are two excited states, and the laser field connects to both the excited state, but effectively it produces a dress state. That is effectively that is one state which is a superposition of both the excited state. Under those conditions, the diagonal terms will not vanish. Okay, so you won't have such a simple case that your coefficient of state A will only modify in even order, or coefficient of state B will only modify in odd order. Such things will not happen if you have such kind of linear combination of two states or a dress state. Okay, when the perturbation includes these diagonal terms. So these are kind of calculation which we do when we go to real atomic spectroscopy or quantum optics research conditions. So this is like, I can send you a paper and you can see. If you study in those fields in quantum optics and work out those density matrix formulation, then actually we don't deal with only states. We take the cluster of states, or we take the entire thing as a density matrix, okay, instead of individual states. So that's kind of, you can say, an advanced level of time dependent perturbation theory to real systems, multi-level real systems. Maybe that is a nice thing when if somebody joins the research and in your post MSc class, this is a good thing to be introduced in a post MSc class. Okay, so in between when you start the research, that how the real system works in multiple state system or linear combination of system, right? This is a simple, only the basic fact of how the transition happens. Okay, so till now it is all fine.
Yes.
Now we go to a, okay, fine. Now we go to a real system. That is, we are talking of perturbation, but we haven't given the form of a perturbation. Now we go to a real form of perturbation, which is a sinusoidal perturbation, acting between two discrete states. So we can actually make the diagonal term 0 because there are two discrete states. But the perturbation now has a form of sinusoidal time dependence. So H dash RT is equal to VR cos omega t. So that H dash AB is equal to VAB cos omega t. So now you have a cos term, to sinusoidal term, where VAB is equal to psi A V psi B in the bracket. And now we directly use the equation 9.17 to the first order, and you can see what the first order tells you. So we take this formulation CB1 and this formulation. So this is CBT, the first order, and this approximately becomes like minus I by H bar VAB 0 to 1 cos omega t dash e to the power I omega 0 t dash dt, which comes out equal to minus I VBA by 2H dash, and 0 to t integration over e to the power I and e to the power I omega 0 plus omega and omega 0 minus omega t dash, which gets to the expression which is given as 9.25. Fine.
Yes.
Okay, so here VR is a time independent observable, that is the potential, and omega is a constant angular frequency. So how do you, such situation is often encountered in physics. So it is, as I was telling you, where do you use this kind of sinusoidal perturbation is that, now if we consider the perturbation of a physical system by an electromagnetic wave of angular frequency omega, like a laser field, then this PIF, this is actually the, you can say, the perturbation, is then represents the probability induced by the incident monochromatic radiation of a transition between the initial state psi I and the final state psi F. Phi I to psi I to psi F. So this is, so this kind of perturbation you can think about when you are having an electromagnetic radiation incident on the atom, and you are trying to find out, what we will do later is to try to find out this probability which is given by PIF, where I and F is defined by the initial state and the final state in terms of phi I and phi F. Okay, so this will be our job, where a sinusoidal perturbation in terms of electromagnetic radiation is there with an angular frequency omega, and the potential VR is a time independent observable. Now with this equation 9.25, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. So here you see that there is two terms. e to the power I omega 0 plus omega term. So omega 0 plus omega term in the denominator and omega 0 minus omega term in the denominator. And these things will simplify if we restrict our attention to driving frequencies omega that are very close to the transition frequency omega 0. So this is kind of an approximation we called as a rotating wave approximation. This is because if the transition, so this perturbation becomes important when we are close to the transition frequency. So our driving frequency means the frequency of the laser. Okay, if that is close to the transition frequency, then the second term in square bracket dominates. Or we assume that omega 0 plus omega is very much greater than omega 0 minus omega. You will see that how there are different restrictions which comes due to this, but this is one of the approximations that we do is that when we take the driving frequency, or say driving means our laser frequency, close to the transition frequency, then the second term actually dominates and the first term is huge, like the denominator is huge, and therefore we can neglect that.
Yes.
Okay. And so the second term only stays there, but only at the case of where omega is close to omega 0. And this is also true because since the perturbations at other frequencies have a negligible probability of causing a transition. Okay, because if we have to make a transition, so if we want to, because the energy levels are discrete, right, this is actually a physical thinking, more conceptual, that if we have a laser which is far away from the difference of the energy levels EB minus EA, then anyway the transitions will not happen. Only when transitions will happen when your laser frequency is very close to your transition frequency. So this approximation is extremely justified, that your driving frequency has to be very close to transition frequency. If you are far away from that, anyway the transition will not happen. Okay. And you also numerically find out, because for a light it is like omega is 10 to the power 15 per second. This is the frequency of the light. And you see that the denominator is in both terms is huge, except that in the neighborhood of omega 0. In the neighborhood of omega 0, this second term is very small. So omega 0 minus omega is small, and therefore you can neglect the first term. And when you drop the term, then CBT, this becomes, you can expand and then you can see minus VBA by 2h bar e to the power I omega 0 by minus omega t by 2 omega 0 omega term, and this is the integral term that is left. So this is like CBT. If you expand the, yes, if you expand this, the second term, no, actually if you don't actually expand the second term, you just do a little add e to the power minus I omega 0 minus omega t by 2 on the denominator and numerator to get an expression in terms of psi omega 0 minus omega t by 2 term. I mean sine omega 0 term. This is also clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Because when we talk of transition probability, we have to take CBT modular square. When we take CBT modular square, then e to the power I omega 0 minus omega this term will be 1.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So, and I will also vanish. This will also be taken care of. So the transition probability that the particle which started in state psi A will be found at a time t in the state psi B. So what is the probability is defined by this expression. So P means probability of A to B in t time is equal to CBT modular square. that is, what is the coefficient of the state in the state psi b modular square, and that is defined by VAB modular square by h bar square, and there is a sine square omega 0 minus t by 2 term and a denominator of omega 0 minus omega square term. So looking at this, you will see like the time dependent part is not actually, it's actually something of a sine square function. So an oscillating function. It's not a constant function. So if you plot this transition probability, this is what you get. So this is actually a very remarkable thing, because now you can actually ask a question yourself that transition probability from the ground state to the excited state. So does it happen that whenever a particle, or whenever the atom or ion or whatever, whenever the particle makes a transition, at some point of time, actually the transition probability makes it happen that it will again fall back to the ground state. And then again, after a time, it will again it will try to make a transition again to the excited state. So there is an oscillatory pattern in the transition probability. Okay. So this oscillates sinusoidally. If you make a sinusoidal perturbation, sinusoidal time dependent perturbation on the system, then the transition probability will also oscillate sinusoidally as a function of time. This is what gives you this entire derivative, entire formulation gives you. So what it says is that after rising to a maximum value, so the maximum value we can calculate, that is modulus of VAB h by h bar e omega 0 minus omega, and the entire square of that. So this rising to a maximum value, now there is actually, I underlined the part, is that this value is obviously much less than 1, because the assumption of perturbation, small perturbation, will be invalid there. So this value you can calculate, and this is obviously much less than 1. But when it reaches a maximum value, the transition probability drops back down to 0. So this is kind of an interesting feature. And you can also see that at time 2n pi by omega 0 minus omega, where Tn, so Tn is equal to 2n pi by omega 0 minus modulus, where n is equal to 1, 2, 3, the particle is certain to be back in the lower state. So the particle goes back in the lower state. So if we want to make a transition, we don't have to put the see, if we once make a transition to the excited state, the particle will fall back to 0. But then again, it will again, at some point of time, the particle will again make a transition from the ground state to the excited state, or from the state B, state A to state B. So if the probability is like is oscillate sinusoidal, then to maximize the chances of providing a transition, you should not keep the perturbation on for a long period. So that is it's a small perturbation. So it is a very, in terms of time, small means in terms of time, we don't have to keep the perturbation for a longer amount of time. So after the particle has reached the maximum, you can turn off the perturbation. Because once you turn off the perturbation, you know that at some point of time, just at pi by omega 0 minus omega, if the particle has reached the state B, and if you turn off the perturbation, the particle will anyway fall down to 0, fall down to the ground state. But once it falls down to the ground state, due to the perturbation already given in the system, it will again rise up to the excited state. So it will go oscillatory from ground to excited states. So like Griffith says, like, hope to catch the system in the upper state, because I mean, unless there are decay terms, obviously there will be decay terms, because in this case, if you give a perturbation, the particle will always stay in the excited state forever. I mean, it will resonate between ground state and excited state, but there is no decay. Unless there is a decay, this will go on forever, which never happens, because every like ground state, every excited state will have a decay term. And there are also decay due to other things, like practical things like collisions, atom-atom collision and such things like that. But yes, you don't have to make the particle go back to the excited state, you don't have to turn on the perturbation now, because itself the perturbation is oscillatory for a sinusoidal perturbation. Okay.
Yes.
Till now it is clear? Yeah, you have to think a little bit on that. This is like, let us go a little bit ahead and see what are the other prospects of this. And other thing is that when we are plotting this, so this is a plot in terms of time. Now we are plotting in terms of frequency. Now, in terms of frequency, when we plot this transition probability, we have already like this exactly shows that as close as you will fall, your driving frequency will be as close as the natural frequency omega 0, which is the separation of the energy levels, the probability is maximum. So this is what it is plotted in this figure 9.2. So as a function of frequency, so when the frequency omega is very close to omega 0, then you have a peak height of EB by VB by 2h bar square. So this is the peak height will be maximum as you go closer to the transition frequency, and the width will be 4 pi by t. Okay, so evidently it gets higher and narrower as the time goes on. So you can see if it's like width is 4 pi by t, so you give, so if the time, I mean, if now see, these are two things, like one thing is that the height, as you go more in time, the height will go higher, and if you go more in time, the width will become narrower. But this is not like infinitely, because it doesn't have, it cannot increase without a limit. So however, the perturbation assumption breaks down before it gets close to 1. So we can believe that the results only for a relatively small t. Like this is the intuition which will tell you that yes, if the peak height is proportional to t and the width is inversely proportional to t, then if you go more time, then the peak height will like shoot up to absolutely 1, or the width will be narrower and narrower, but those have a restriction because your perturbation itself, your perturbation formulation breaks down. So even if theoretically you might expect things like that, it will never do like that. In practical sense, it will not do like that. Now this is a kind of a, we can find out a more detailed, you can say detailed
So I think, sir, this is expected the result, because it's just because the previous one is and this one is just the Fourier transform of each other.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Exactly. This one is look like the delta function where it just have the one single point.
Yeah, this
and
looks like a delta function.
Yes.
This looks like a delta function, but keeping in mind that delta function, if it's a delta function, it might reach probability 1. It never happens like that. So it will have a width.
Sir, if we took observation for a longer time, then I think we get a sharp width.
Yeah, this is what is expected. Now, let us see if there are any restrictions to this. I mean, how good is this perturbation theory works? Okay. So for that, I am actually changing the, till now it was Griffith. but then it has a very nice discussions in Cohen-Tanouji's quantum mechanics book. So here I will actually change to a different notation. Now this is a Griffith. It gives you a notation of perturbation as P A to B, right? I'm just putting you in the same foot. And here in Cohen-Tanouji, it denotes as PIF. So I to F and P is the probability. In Griffith, whatever is the V, in Cohen-Tanouji, it is denoted by W. Okay, and the sinusoidal function that Cohen-Tanouji denotes as a function of F, which is like depends on the T and omega minus omega 0 Fi. So this change of terms is clear, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. I mean, since there is I like did not change the term, then I have to write everything back. But this equation C11 and equation C12, this is similar to your equation 9.28. Basically. This is clear in your mind.
Yes.
ये बाकी लोग है या नहीं?
सर यहीं पे हैं सब।
सिर्फ दोनों का आवाज सुनाई देता है मुझे।
सर वी ऑल आर प्रेजेंट।
कौन कह रहा है? सब लोग। अरे दोनों ही सिर्फ ऑन है। सुनील नहीं, सुरेंद्र का सुनाई देता है, भवानी का सुनाई देता है, सुनील भी है। ओके, ये ऑनलाइन में बहुत मजा है यार, ऑन करके चले जाओ।
सर वी आर प्रेजेंट ऑल आर।
हाँ, सो भी ले सकते हो। अरे यार बहुत बोरिंग लग रहा है, अभी थोड़ा सो लेते हैं।
नो नो सर,
no, it's not that I don't do. Usually if there is very uninteresting talk जिसका मुझे कुछ लेना देना नहीं है, बट लेना मतलब रहना पड़ेगा, ऑन करके फिर बिस्तर में सो जाओ। अभी ठंडाई भी आ रहा है, मतलब व्हाट यू कॉल, हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं, जारा, राइट?
नहीं सर, ठंडी बोलते हैं।
ठंडी बोलते हैं। जारा किसको बोलते हैं? जारा बहुत ठंड को।
जाड़ा, जाड़ा बोलते हैं सर उसको।
जाड़ा ना?
हाँ जाड़ा, सर्दी को बोलते हैं जाड़ा सर।
एक ही चीज।
हाँ हाँ हाँ, जाड़ा।
हाँ सर, इसी ठंड को ही बोलते हैं जाड़ा।
हाँ हाँ हाँ, वो शायद ज्यादा ठंड हो जाए तब उसको जाड़ा बोलते हैं।
हाँ सर।
यस सर।
तो हाँ वही है। अभी तो उतना पढ़ा नहीं है वैसे। तुम जो सुनील, तुम कहाँ पे हो?
सर राजस्थान में अभी ठंड पड़ रही है यहाँ पे तो फुल।
हाँ वही, दिसंबर मतलब नवंबर का बीचों बीच आ गया, तो अभी तो ठंड पड़ेगा ही।
हाँ यहाँ पे ज्यादा ठंड है वहां से।
कैलकाटा में क्या होगा कि उतना ठंड पड़ेगा दिसंबर का मे बी सेकेंड वीक में या जनवरी।
दिसंबर में जितना होता है वो अभी उतना है।
हाँ अभी उतना है। अभी तो मानो कि क्या 15 to 20 के बीच तो आ गया है।
हमारे 10 के अराउंड है, 10 से भी कम है टेम्परेचर।
अभी 10 चला गया है?
10 से भी कम ही रहता है नॉर्मली, नाइट सुबह सुबह तो, और नाइट में भी।
अरे बाप रे। और तुम्हारा वो आ रहा है फॉग?
फॉग अभी आ रहा है लेकिन कम आ रहा है।
अच्छा,
इतना नहीं। और 10 to 15 डेज के बाद में ज्यादा होगा।
हाँ हाँ, मैंने दिल्ली में पढ़ाई किए थे, तो इसीलिए फॉग बहुत होता है। कैलकाटा में उतना नहीं होता। दिल्ली में तो बहुत हुआ था। और एक बार हमको चंडीगढ़ जाना पड़ा, मतलब कोई काम के लिए। दिल्ली से ड्राइव करके मैं और मेरा पीएचडी गाइड चंडीगढ़ गए थे। तो वापस आने के टाइम पे इतना फॉग था कि बाप रे, मतलब बहुत सावधानी से चलाना पड़ा गाड़ी, नहीं तो एक्सीडेंट प्रोन है पूरा। कभी कभार तो दिखाई नहीं देता है रात में, तो मतलब चला मत। अच्छा चलो, दिस इज योर so this is the change between like from that part to Cohen-Tanouji, and this is the same formula. So this C11 and 12, C12, these are the same formula. अरे बाहर कौन काम करने लगा यार? Anyway, so you can see that this is the transition probability in omega, and you see that this is the variation with respect to omega, and it is the same that he has we got, like WFI square T square and by 4 H bar square. This is the peak of the probability, and the width between the first minima width is delta omega is equal to 4 pi by T. So this probability presents a maximum at omega is equal to omega Fi, and as we move away, it decreases going to 0 at 2 pi by T. And when omega minus omega Fi continues to increase, it oscillates between the value of WFi square by H bar square, omega minus omega Fi square, and 0. So this gives you actually a diffraction pattern. The probability, transition probability, gives out a diffraction pattern. Okay. And the important thing is that the intensity is proportional to T square and the width is inversely proportional to T. So if we go longer in time, what happens? Now, the other part is that when we are talking about, say, like omega, our driving frequency has to be close to the transition frequency. There are two cases can arise. So one is for a time, if the time is T is fixed, then it is a function of only variable omega. But here you can either have an omega is equal to omega Fi or omega minus omega Fi. Now here what happens is that a resonance phenomena therefore occurs when the angular frequency of perturbation coincides with the Bohr angular frequency between the states. So if we agree to choose omega is greater than equal to 0, then this equation C8, this gives out a condition of whether the omega is greater than 0 or less than 0. Okay. And in this case, actually, it is simple that when it is, so if the system undergoes a transition from lower energy level EI to a higher energy level EF by the resonant absorption of energy quantum H dash nu, in the second case, the resonant perturbation stimulates a passage of system from high level E1 to lower level EF. So basically what it means is that this I can actually remove. This is very simple. That one case, it is actually from transition from I to F. So it is sort of absorption. And the other case, it is a transition from I to F, but where I is the excited state. So this is basically an induced emission. So either it is absorption or emission. This depends upon whether how you approach omega from the left side. So omega is more than omega Fi or less than omega Fi. This is sort of whether it is a excited state or whether it is a ground state. It depends upon the value. And the other part is that now see, if you have a resonance with delta omega, okay, which is defined as the distance between the first two zeros is about omega is equal to omega Fi. So inside this integral, the transition probability takes the largest value, and this now you see the second transition, the secondary maximum of PYIF, we get that at 3 pi by 2 value, and that is equal to WFI square T square 9 pi square HZ square, which is less than 5% of the transition probability at resonance. Okay, so we have delta omega 4 pi by T. So you see that the maximum transition probability is within the first peak, and the second maximum, the first secondary maximum, where we get this is only 5% of the transition probability as resonance. And this also says like is that there is a certain analogy with the time energy uncertainty relation. This is also important because you cannot really go smaller, larger and larger of time and have a smaller and smaller of width. This also becomes a barrier. I mean, this you have to also keep in mind the time energy uncertainty relation. And so we assume that we want to measure the energy difference EF minus EI by applying a sinusoidal perturbation of angular frequency omega to the system and vary omega so that to detect the resonance. So this is what we do, right? Now, here the point is that if we do not know what is the difference between the energy level, what we do is that we put a laser beam and slowly change its frequency. See, you have to think it in terms of the experimental point of view, or in the way that we do the measurements. It's not like only that when we know E minus the energy level, we know the exact frequency to be given. But when we don't know it and we scan, say, the laser frequency, what we usually used to do, like we scan the laser frequency, and whenever there is a transition, we get a peak. And this is how we do any experiment. So when we scan the frequency, that means we are giving a sinusoidal perturbation to the system. So it is externally imposed sinusoidal perturbation. Okay. And then if the perturbation acts during the time t, the uncertainty of delta E on the value of ER minus EI will be like, according to the uncertainty principle, delta E is h bar delta omega, that is h bar by t. This is order. Therefore, the product T delta E cannot be smaller than h bar. This recalls the time energy relation. Also, T here is not a time interval characteristic of free evolution of the system. This is externally imposed. So you see that you will not get a peak in your absorption spectrum unless you're very close to the transition. And then we also see that how much time should this perturbation act on the system. This is defined also by this T delta E uncertainty relation. So you don't have to give too long a perturbation to see a transition. You can just give a transition which is defined by this h bar. And this is not like, this T is not like an inherent of it's an internal characteristic of the system, but this T is the time that you are giving from an external perturbation, or say like a laser frequency or a laser tuning of the laser frequency. Okay, Kuch, did you understand some reasoning?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think this approach is better, sir. If you can, teach us everything in terms of experimental point of view, so that we can imagine it better. So yes, I can understand that.
Exactly. So this is a good part, that when we talk about when we have done uncertainty, time energy uncertainty, but there we are not explicit about that where this time comes from. So this time is some kind of, when we do whenever we taught about quantum mechanics, usually this connection is lost, that there is an energy, there is a time, and time is related to frequency, but this is all internal way. Internal in the system characteristics, right? Or in an atom characteristic. But here the atom is separate and the time is separate. The time is a laser which is giving you this perturbation. Therefore, the importance of studying time-dependent perturbation theory comes very important, because when you are trying to do a spectroscopy, you are putting an external perturbation to the system to find out the characteristic of the system. And then there is a limit of how much time you have to put, or what frequency you have to get to that transition, because the transition is unknown to you. You only know that rough calculation, this might be very close to this frequency, but you do not know the exact frequency. But this is how the system reacts to your external perturbation. This is what this time-dependent perturbation theory tells you. This is the other way around. Instead of thinking in the frame of the atom or the quantum particle, you are thinking in the frame of what is unknown. And if something is unknown, how will system react to give you the observable, your interesting observable? That is the frequency or the energy difference, something like that. Okay. But your time, the uncertainty relationship cannot be violated, so that will anyway be there. And the other thing that we can get from this relation delta omega 2 pi by t is that to come to this condition on resonance approximation, the t has to be very much greater than 1 by omega fi, that is 1 by omega. So t has to be more than 1 by omega. Now this is valid only if the sinusoidal perturbation acts during a time t which is large compared to 1 by omega. Now the physical meaning is on such a condition is that during the interval 0 to t, the perturbation must perform numerous oscillations to appear to the system as a sinusoidal perturbation. What does this mean? So let's go to C13. So delta omega is equal to 2 pi by t. Now we are telling that as the more that we go on t, the narrower the width will be as narrow as we go more in time. Okay, so larger the time, smaller the width. But is there any so if we just rewrite is in a different way, so the time will be a lot more than omega. I mean, to get a real good resonance, the time has to be more than omega. Now what happens then? If the time is more, I mean, if it's a larger amount of time, then the probability this sinusoidal perturbation is acting on the system for a large amount of time, and this time is large compared to 1 by omega. So the perturbation must perform numerous oscillations to appear to the system as sinusoidal perturbation. On the other hand, t is small compared. Yeah, it's
what it is telling is that if time is high enough, the peak will be very much narrower. That means the energy will be always conserved, because in the previous one you have said that, right? I asked you, yes, that point. Previous one, sir. Previous one slide.
Wait.
Where it has the sinusoidal curve.
This one?
No, or the other one, sir. Other one. There is only one peak. Okay, one. Okay, this one. So as you can see, after that peak, there is a finite probability that there is a chance of probability. I mean, because at the omega fi it is high, but still there is some probability that we can find below. I mean, below to that and after that omega fi. So if it is high enough, then this will be very peak, very sharp peak, right?
Yes.
This is the and for its Fourier transform, the frequencies for that to be accompanied with the Fourier transform, it should be very much high oscillating. That is what I am saying.
Yes, because you will only get one frequency component.
Yes,
so therefore, if this is sharp, then this is a perfect sinusoidal. There is no loss mechanism. So this is there is no other frequency mixed with this. This is a pure sinusoidal. This will become.
Exactly. That I was saying.
Yes. So therefore, if you take a Fourier transform as this, you will not get this diffraction kind of pattern for very large t. This is what you mean, right?
Yes, sir. And this one actually we discussed in our quantum mechanics 2 class by Professor Shiv Shankar Bhattacharya. He pointed out this particular problem.
Yes. He was teaching which time dependent perturbation theory?
Time dependent perturbation theory, yes, sir.
Okay.
So he pointed out that how there is no energy conservation violation in this case. I mean, if omega Fi is not equal to 0.
Hmm.
Then he pointed out this is not the case. We have to also think about the energy, time energy uncertainty principle. So this, we have to see the observation, how we are observing it. If we are observing it for the long enough time, then the energy is always conserved. So that he pointed out.
Okay, okay. Okay, so and if the perturbation actually is small compared to 1 by omega, the perturbation would not have the time it and would be equivalent to a perturbation varying linear in time or a constant perturbation. This is what. If you have a very small time, then actually there is no time for the sinusoidal perturbation to start off.
Yes.
Yes. And the other things, that interesting fact that you can find out is that, so the first order approximation, these are limits to the first order calculation, is that the first order approximation can be cease to be valid, means can be invalid when time becomes too large. So this can be seen from the expression that at resonance you can write. So this is the probability at resonance, means the sign factor is not there. So this is the probability of WFI square by 4 h dash square t square. So this function becomes infinite when t goes to infinity, which is absurd since the probability can never be greater than 1. So large amount of time, this actually formulation completely breaks down. And in practice, for the first order approximation to be valid at resonance, the probability must be much smaller than 1. So since it is at t greater, so this has to be much smaller than 1. So h bar by modulus of fi dash, this value should be greater than t. And therefore, for this theory to be meaningful, obviously if this is one condition, okay, that t is very much less than h dash by WFI modulus, and the other condition is t is very much greater than 1 by omega. So if you add both these conditions, you will get 1 by omega Fi is very much less than h dash by WFI. So I mean, what can we get from this? This inequality means that the energy difference is much larger than the matrix element W between phi I and phi F. So what is a W? Is a potential. So this shows that your so for this perturbation theory to work, actually your potential has to be much lower. Potential energy has to be much lower than, what do you mean by the potential here? It's the intensity of the light. So WT,
I think amplitude.
amplitude, yeah, exactly. The amplitude of the light. This is where we started, like VAB. W is VAB. So the amplitude has to be very small than the energy difference between the energy levels. So you may not take, so that means you should not take a strong, highly intense electromagnetic wave. So a strong electromagnetic wave. Does it mean like that? So the intensity of the laser has to be low. What do you mean by amplitude? What do you mean? What does it mean by physically? So the electric field has to be low. So it's a weak field case. Does it mean like that?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Okay. Okay, so it's a weak field case. I mean, if you probably take a strong field case, then maybe it's a AC Stark shift will happen. That is the Stark shift. If you take a strong field, that the energy levels will be shifted, and you probably will form a drift state. I have to think a little bit, but this is an interesting
So
thing.
for meaningful, I think the H cross omega Fi should be greater than WFI, which is the amplitude of um, the
Of the perturbation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that means you have to have a like weak perturbation, or else it won't be a perturbation.
Yes.
Does it mean like that? So the H dash, the value of H dash perturbation has to be small enough so that it can be treated as a perturbation. If this is high, I mean, if this is not true, then you can't treat this as a perturbation. This is I mean, this also means like that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was the initially when we studied the I mean the perturbation theory, that H equal to H naught plus some perturbation. That parameter is a parameter called lambda that should be very much small. That was the initial condition, so it is applying to that, I think.
Yeah, so we went back. So what we took as an assumption, after solving for a sinusoidal perturbation, this assumption actually holds true. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that is it. The assumption that we took that the perturbation has to be small, that holds true. So it is, I mean, there are, okay. So that's an interesting thing. Let me read, let me go through the Stark effect, and then I can tell you at least physically that whether this is the thing that if we take the bigger amplitude, does it mean that the energy levels actually shift due to the why it is called AC Stark shift? AC means it's a sinusoidal thing. Okay, that's an interesting fact actually. I'll let you know. Stark shift is not in your syllabus, but maybe the basic concept I can give you. Okay.
So for Stark effect, right, or Stark shift?
Yeah, we will learn Stark effect.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So what happens is that for the first order perturbation theory, it is nothing changed. The second order perturbation theory, it has the 4 level. I mean, second order, not second order. I mean, for the n equal to 2. For n equal to 2, there is 4 degenerate cases. So what happens is that for m not same, for the value of m which is not same, they are, I mean, coupled. So I mean, degeneracy is lost by coupling two of the form. I mean, if it is u1, u2, u3, u4, the eigenvectors, so u1, u2 coupled with u1 plus u2 and u1 minus u2, and u3, u4 is still degenerate.
पर भवानी उसमें अपने कांस्टेंट इलेक्ट्रिक फील्ड के लिए पढ़ा था सर, एसी इलेक्ट्रिक
फील्ड पर एसी इलेक्ट्रिक फील्ड वो तो हमने नहीं पढ़ा, राइट?
हाँ, नहीं पढ़ा, वो बहुत सर बात बता रहे हैं उसकी।
हाँ, मैं मतलब क्या है कि इसमें क्या है कि यू हैव टू टेक अ स्मॉलर एम्पलीट्यूड ऑफ योर इलेक्ट्रिक फील्ड दैट यू आर टेकिंग दिस, नहीं तो परटर्बेशन थ्योरी ब्रेक डाउन करेगा। अगर हमने एक स्ट्रॉन्गर एम्पलीट्यूड ले लिया तो चेंज क्या होगा, दैट इज माई इंट्यूशन। ये परटर्बेशन थ्योरी तो ब्रेक डाउन होगा, बट आप तो ऐसा नहीं कर सकते कि नहीं मैं स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं लूंगा, मैं वीक में ही काम करूंगा। अगर हमने स्ट्रॉन्ग ले लिया तो क्या होगा, परटर्बेशन थ्योरी ब्रेक डाउन होगा, मगर एटम रिएक्ट कैसे करेगा?
सर अगर सर ओमेगा Fi अगर बड़ा लिया तो T कम करना पड़ेगा, so that it will be PIF will be equal to 1. एक तो बड़ा है तो एक छोटा करना पड़ेगा, I think, right?
फ्रीक्वेंट बढ़ा देंगे तो ज्यादा इंटरेक्ट कर पाएगा, क्या है वो?
ये भी सर ने आई थिंक शिवशंकर सर ने डिस्कस किया था कि PIF should be 1. So either omega Fi should less or T high, or T less omega Fi should high.
अच्छा, मतलब W हाई होगा तो T कम कर दो।
शायद ऐसे ही कुछ उन्होंने बोला था, बट आई थिंक वी शुड अगेन कंसल्ट हिम। He actually
देखो,
discussed.
ओमेगा Fi you cannot change क्योंकि ओमेगा Fi is defined by your yeah, it is a transition thing.
But you said right, if I want to make the amplitude higher, वो तो initially हम दे रहे हैं, right? Whatever we want to do, then we will observe for the small time. Maybe that will work. I'm also confused right now, but the answer should be there in his note, quantum mechanics 2 note. I have to check.
Okay, check and tell. परटर्बेशन थ्योरी ब्रेक तो नहीं करेगा, मतलब यू कैनॉट गो टू हाई, क्योंकि और अगर हाई कर दिया तो एटॉमिक स्टेट वहीं पे रहेगा क्या? माने दिस देयर इज एनी अदर इफेक्ट, इफ द परटर्बेशन थ्योरी ब्रेक्स देन वी कांट यूज दिस। दैट इज फाइन, मतलब ब्रेक हो ही सकता है।
Yes, sir.
पर तब हम कैसे ट्रीटमेंट करेंगे? इट मे बी नॉट इन योर सिलेबस, बट जस्ट टू नो। ठीक है, this is an interesting thing. Maybe I will also discuss and see. Chalo, okay. So this part I will stop here.